The president's top trade representative is in the hot seat on Capitol Hill. U.S. Trade Rep Jamieson Greer is testifying before the Senate Finance Committee right now. So far, he's confirmed tariffs will go into effect at midnight tonight, and he says he does not think a deal with China will get done in the, quote, very near term. ABC News correspondent Jay O'Brien's on Capitol Hill with more. Jay, what are your biggest takeaways from this hearing so far?
So a couple of things just in the order in which the news broke. First, Greer said that nearly 50 countries have come to the administration since those tariffs were announced last week to try to negotiate new trade deals. But then he said that it's not the administration's position that these trade deals are going to change in any way, shape, or form before those steeper tariffs snap into place at midnight tonight, obviously midnight tomorrow. Another thing from Greer, as I look down at the active transcript here, is that he was pressed on, will there be some kind of exemption or a stalling of a trade tariff for a specific country or a pushing off of a tariff for a specific country if they have engaged in negotiations with the White House. Remember, the president has done that in the past with tariffs on Canada and Mexico. And Greer seemed to indicate that that was not going to be the case, that there will be no exemptions or things of that nature, at least in the near term. And again, the steepest tariffs, the highest percentage of tariffs, the ones that we saw the president announce late last week, not just on China, but on Vietnam too, and the list goes on, they snap into place in just hours from now, Diane. Here's a little bit more of what Greer said in terms of what is next for these tariffs and what, if any, changes the administration would be making to this policy as it continues.
At this time, the president's fixed in his purpose. The nature of the emergency that I discussed earlier is not something we can wait on anymore. So we will have the president's plan go into effect, and we're coupling that with immediate negotiations with our partners.
So the messaging is somewhat mixed because Greer said that line, and he's repeated it several times in the hearing, that the president is, quote, fixed on his purpose, but then he said they're going to couple the tariffs with negotiations with other countries. So the question still hanging over this administration, Diane, is will there be some kind of reprieve on these tariffs if countries do come to the negotiating table? That's what top administration officials like Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, for instance, have been telegraphing. But there's been a lot of mixed messaging on that point up to this moment from this White House.
And Jay, Greer singled out China, saying while other countries have shown a willingness to negotiate, China's intent on retaliating. How big of a deal is that given our trade relationship with China?
And it raises the stakes here too, Diane, remember, because what the president discussed yesterday were additional tariffs on China in addition to the tariffs that he had announced last week. So you're looking at 104% tariff on Chinese goods to snap into place at midnight tonight. And so it demonstrates, obviously, the first step, or not necessarily the first step, but another step towards a growing trade war with China. And Greer was pushed on, should firms that have a deep relationship with China, they make products there or they have parts of their products made in China, et cetera, try to re-strategize here. And Greer's overall message in this hearing was that, yes, companies should look to bring their manufacturing back to the United States, but he also acknowledged that that is a much longer-term process. It's not something that you can accomplish even in a year, potentially even in a few years, Diane.
All right, Jay O'Brien on Capitol Hill. Jay, thank you.